The alarm bells screamed through the deep space station like angry hornets. Commander Sarah Chin dropped her coffee and ran to the main control room. Her boots pounded against the metal floor as red lights flashed everywhere. "What do we have?" Sarah shouted over the noise. Lieutenant Mike Torres was typing fast on his computer. His hands were shaking. "Ma'am, we have a massive energy reading coming from the outer edge of our solar system. It's huge." Sarah looked at the main screen. A bright dot was moving toward them. It was still far away, but their computer said it was enormous. "How big?" "At least 10 kilometers long. Maybe more. And ma'am, there's something else." Mike's face went white. "The computer says this ship has Earth identification codes." Sarah's heart stopped. "What kind of codes?" "It's the Prometheus, ma'am. The ESS Prometheus." Everyone in the control room stopped talking. They all stared at the screen. Sarah felt like someone had hit her in the stomach. The Prometheus had been gone for 73 years. It was humanity's first big ship to travel to another star. 50,000 people had been on that ship, hoping to start new lives on a planet called Kepler 442b. But something had gone wrong. The ship had just vanished. One day it was there, sending normal reports. The next day, nothing. No signals, no messages, no sign it had ever existed. The families of those 50,000 people had waited for years. But no news ever came. "Are you sure about those codes?" Sarah asked. "Yes, ma'am. The computer has checked 3 times. It's definitely the Prometheus." Mike looked at her. "But ma'am, that's impossible. The ship disappeared 73 years ago." Sarah walked closer to the screen. According to their instruments, the ship was moving at normal speed. It was acting like a regular ship that had been traveling around their own solar system. "Get me Admiral Webb on the emergency channel," Sarah ordered, "and wake up everyone on this station. I want all our best people looking at this." Over the next few hours, the space station became very busy. Scientists ran between computers trying to understand what they were seeing. The communication team tried to send messages to the approaching ship but got no answer. The military team prepared weapons just in case. Admiral Harrison Webb arrived 6 hours later. He was an old man with gray hair, but he still moved like a soldier. Sarah met him at the docking bay. "Commander Chen, give me your report," Admiral Webb said as they walked. "Sir, the ship is definitely the Prometheus. All our scans confirm it. The hull design, the energy signatures, even the small damage marks. Everything matches the records from 73 years ago." "But that's impossible." Admiral Webb stopped walking. "That ship was supposed to be light years away by now." "Yes, sir. The ship looks exactly like it did when it left Earth. There's no sign of damage from a long journey. The hull is clean. The energy output is normal and all systems appear to be working perfectly." They entered the control room. The main screen showed a much clearer picture of the approaching ship. It looked exactly like the Prometheus, long, silver, with rotating sections and huge engines. "Have we been able to contact them?" Admiral Webb asked. "No, sir," Torres replied. "We've tried every frequency. The ship is not responding." Admiral Webb studied the screen. "How many life signs are you detecting?" Torres looked at his computer, then looked again. His face went pale. "Sir, this can't be right. What is it?" "Sir, I'm reading 50 million life signs on that ship." The control room went silent. Admiral Webb stared at Torres. "Check your equipment." "I've checked it 5 times, sir. All our scanners are working perfectly. There are 50 million human life signs on that ship." "But sir, that's impossible. The Prometheus wasn't big enough to hold that many people." Sarah looked at the screen. It looked exactly the same size as when it had left Earth. "Could our scanners be wrong about the ship's size?" "No, ma'am," Torres replied. "We're measuring it with 3 different instruments. The ship is exactly the same size as 73 years ago, 10 kilometers long, 2 kilometers wide, but somehow it's carrying 1,000 times more people." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's science officer, walked over. She was a small woman with dark hair who studied alien life. "Sir, I've been looking at the energy readings from the ship. There's something very unusual." "What do you mean?" Admiral Webb asked. "The ship is producing energy patterns I've never seen before. It's like their engines are working, but not in any way that follows physics as we understand it. The energy is folded somehow, like it's coming from more places than should be possible." Sarah felt cold. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I'm saying that ship may have encountered something during its journey, something that changed it in ways we don't understand. Hours passed as the Prometheus came closer to Earth. The ship never responded to messages, but it never acted threatening either. It just kept moving toward them at a steady pace. When the ship was close enough, Admiral Webb made a decision. "We're going to send a team over to investigate." "Sir, is that safe?" Sarah asked. "We need answers, Commander. We won't get them by sitting here watching." Admiral Webb chose 12 people to board the Prometheus. Sarah would lead the team along with Dr. Vasquez, Lieutenant Torres, and 9 Marines for protection. They would take a small shuttle and dock directly with the Prometheus. As they prepared, Dr. Vasquez pulled Sarah aside. "Commander, I need to tell you something. I've been studying the energy patterns all day. They're not just unusual, they're impossible. The ship is somehow occupying more space than it physically contains." "What does that mean?" "I think it means whatever happened to the Prometheus changed the basic laws of how space works around it. We might be walking into something beyond our understanding." Sarah looked out the window at the approaching ship. It looked so normal, so much like the ship that had left Earth full of hope 73 years ago. "We have our orders, Doctor. We're going to find out what happened to our people." The shuttle launch went smoothly. As they got closer to the Prometheus, Sarah could see more details. It really did look exactly like when it left Earth. The hull was clean and shiny, with no signs of damage. There were lights on in the windows, suggesting people were moving around inside. "Prometheus Control, this is Commander Chen of Earth Defense Forces. Please respond," Sarah said into her radio. This time something happened. The radio crackled and then a voice came through. But it was not just one voice, it sounded like many voices speaking at exactly the same time. "We have been waiting for you," the voices said. "Welcome home." Sarah looked at her team. Everyone had heard the strange voices. Torres was working on his scanner, trying to figure out where the transmission came from. "Prometheus, this is Commander Chen. Please identify yourself. We are coming aboard to investigate." "You may come aboard," the voices replied. "We have much to show you, much to teach you. Humanity is ready for the next step." Sarah felt both excited and terrified. After 73 years, they were finally going to get answers. But those voices had not sounded quite human. The shuttle docked without problems. As Sarah opened the airlock, she took a deep breath. Whatever was waiting on the other side would change everything. "Stay close together," she told her team. "Keep your weapons ready, but don't shoot unless I give the order. We're here to find answers, not start a fight." The airlock door opened and Sarah stepped into the corridor of the Prometheus. What she saw made her heart race with fear and wonder. The corridor looked normal at first, just like any corridor on a human spaceship. But as Sarah looked closer, she realized the corridor was much longer than it should be. It seemed to stretch forever, disappearing into a distant point that hurt her eyes to look at. "Commander," Dr. Vasquez whispered. "This corridor is longer than the entire ship." Sarah nodded. The ship was only 10 kilometers long, but this corridor looked like it went on for hundreds of kilometers. Somehow, the inside of the ship was much bigger than the outside. This was just the beginning of the impossible things they were about to discover. Sarah led her team deeper into the impossible corridors of the Prometheus. Every step made less sense than the last. The hallways bent and twisted in ways that hurt to think about. Sometimes they walked through a door and found themselves in a room that was clearly bigger than the entire ship. Dr. Vasquez kept checking her instruments, but they were not giving useful information. "Commander, my scanners can't make sense of this place. It's like the laws of physics are different here." Lieutenant Torres had the same problem. "Ma'am, according to my measurements, we've walked over 20 kilometers inside this ship. But the ship is only 10 kilometers long." Sarah tried not to think too hard about it. Her job was to find answers. "Keep moving. We need to find someone in charge." They passed more people as they walked. All of them looked human, but all of them had that same strange way of moving. Some were working at computer stations that seemed to be made of light instead of metal. Others were just standing in groups, not talking but somehow communicating anyway. "Commander," said Marine Sergeant Rodriguez from the back of the group. "These people are following us." Sarah looked back. It was true. Every person they had passed was now walking behind them, keeping a respectful distance but clearly interested. There were dozens of them now, all moving in perfect step with each other. "Should we be worried?" Sarah asked Dr. Vasquez quietly. "I don't think they mean to hurt us," the doctor replied. "But Commander, I'm detecting strange energy readings from them. It's like each person is connected to some kind of network." They continued walking until they reached a large circular room at the center of the ship. But like everything else, the room was much bigger than it should be. The ceiling was so high Sarah could not see the top, and the walls curved away into shadows. In the center was a raised platform, and on it stood a man who looked about 50 years old. He had gray hair and a kind face, wearing the uniform of a ship's captain. Sarah recognized him immediately. It was Captain James Morrison, the original commander of the Prometheus. But when Captain Morrison looked at them, Sarah could see his eyes were different. They seemed to contain depths that went on forever, like looking into space and seeing entire galaxies. "Welcome," Captain Morrison said, and his voice was the same multiple voice they had heard from everyone else. "We have been waiting for you to come." "Captain Morrison?" Sarah stepped forward. "I'm Commander Chen from Earth Defense Forces. Sir, your ship has been missing for 73 years. We need to know what happened." Captain Morrison smiled, but it was not quite a human smile. It was too perfect, too knowing. Time works differently when you learn to see between the spaces. For us, it has been much longer than 73 years. "We have learned so much." "What do you mean? Where have you been?" "We went to Kepler 442b as planned. But we found something there we did not expect. Something that has existed between the stars for millions of years, waiting for species like humanity to become ready." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward with her scanner. "Captain, I'm detecting energy patterns from you that don't match any known form of human biology. What happened to you?" Captain Morrison's smile became even wider. "We evolved, Doctor. We were given the chance to become more than human, and we accepted." "Evolved how?" Sarah demanded. "And what about the 50,000 colonists on this ship?" "They are all here," Captain Morrison said, gesturing around the room. "All 50,000, plus their children and their children's children. We have learned to make space bend to our will. The ship contains as much room as we need." Sarah looked around the room again. Now she could see more people standing in the shadows. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, all watching, all connected somehow. "You said 50,000 plus their children," Lieutenant Torres said. "But our scanners detected 50 million life signs." "Yes," Captain Morrison replied. 40 generations have been born during our journey. Time moves differently when you are not bound by linear thinking. "That's impossible," Dr. Vasquez said. "You've only been gone 73 years. Captain Morrison looked at her with those strange, deep eyes. "Doctor, you are thinking like someone who still believes time only moves in one direction. We have learned that the universe is much more flexible than humans originally believed." Sarah felt a headache starting. Nothing these people were saying made sense, but her instruments were confirming impossible things were happening around them. "Captain, I need you to explain clearly what happened." "Of course," Captain Morrison said, and suddenly the room changed around them. The walls became transparent, and Sarah found herself looking out into space. But it was not normal space. It was filled with structures that looked like they were made of crystal and light. Huge geometric shapes floated between the stars, some bigger than planets. "This is what we found when we reached Kepler 442b, Captain Morrison explained. "The planet was not empty. It was home to beings that exist partially in our dimension and partially in others." The view changed, and Sarah saw the original Prometheus landing on a planet that looked normal but was filled with crystalline structures that seemed to shift and change as she watched. "Beings welcomed us," Captain Morrison continued. "They had been waiting for a species like humanity to develop enough technology to reach them. They offered to teach us, to help us evolve beyond the limitations of three-dimensional thinking." "What kind of beings?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "They are older than our solar system," Captain Morrison replied. "They have been watching intelligent life throughout the galaxy, waiting for species to become ready for the next step in evolution." The images changed again, showing humans from the original crew interacting with beings that seemed to be made of living crystal. The beings were beautiful and terrible at the same time, with forms that seemed to exist in more dimensions than Sarah's eyes could process. "They taught us to see beyond individual consciousness," Captain Morrison said. "They showed us how to connect our minds together, how to share knowledge and experience directly. They taught us to manipulate space and time to make the impossible possible." "But you're still human," Sarah said, though she was not sure that was true anymore. "We are more than human now," Captain Morrison replied. "We have kept the best parts of what we were, but we have added so much more. We can see across dimensions, communicate without words, travel through space by folding it around us." Lieutenant Torres was frantically taking readings. "Commander, the energy levels in this room are off the charts. Whatever these people have become, they're generating more power than a nuclear reactor. And we want to share this gift with Earth, Captain Morrison said. Humanity is ready for the next step. The beings between the stars have been waiting for us to send them a signal that we are prepared. What kind of signal? Sarah asked. Our return, Captain Morrison said simply. The fact that we have come back to Earth carrying what we have learned is the signal. Soon the beings will come to offer the same gifts to all of humanity. Sarah felt fear run down her spine. What if humanity doesn't want these gifts? Captain Morrison's expression became sad but determined. Commander, you do not understand yet. This is not a choice in the way you think of choices. This is evolution. This is the next step that all intelligent species must take if they want to survive. Are you threatening us? Sergeant Rodriguez asked, his hand moving toward his weapon. No, Captain Morrison replied calmly. We do not need to threaten anyone. The changes have already begun. Every moment you spend in contact with us, every breath you take in this space, you are beginning to evolve. Dr. Vasquez suddenly looked down at her scanner and gasped. Commander, the energy readings from our team are changing. We're absorbing some kind of radiation from these people. Sarah felt panic. Is it dangerous? I don't think so, Dr. Vasquez said slowly. But it's definitely changing us at a cellular level. Our brain activity is increasing and I'm detecting new neural pathways forming. Sarah felt something happening in her mind. It was like doors were opening that she had never known existed. She could sense the thoughts and feelings of her team members. Beyond them, she could feel the vast network of consciousness that connected everyone on the Prometheus. Don't fight it, Captain Morrison said gently. The fear will pass once you understand. We are not losing our humanity. We are fulfilling it. Sarah knew she should be afraid, should be fighting against what was happening. But the experience was beautiful and overwhelming. She could feel knowledge flowing into her mind, understanding that transcended anything she had ever experienced. The transformation had begun, and there was no going back. Sarah and her team returned to the Earth Defense Station 6 hours after boarding the Prometheus, but they were no longer the same people who had left. Admiral Webb could see the change immediately. Their eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever, and they moved with a strange grace that made him uncomfortable. Commander Chen, report, Admiral Webb ordered, though something in Sarah's expression made him step backward. Sarah looked at him with those new, deep eyes and smiled. Admiral, we have wonderful news. The colonists from the Prometheus are alive and well. More than that, they have learned things that will change everything for humanity. What kind of things? Admiral Webb asked, motioning for his security team to move closer. They have learned to transcend the limitations of individual consciousness, Dr. Vasquez said, speaking in perfect unison with Sarah. They have discovered how to connect human minds together, how to manipulate space and time, how to see the universe as it really is. Admiral Webb felt a chill. These people were speaking like the voices from the Prometheus, multiple voices perfectly synchronized. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to report to medical immediately. All of you need full examinations. That won't be necessary, Lieutenant Torres said, also speaking in the same synchronized voice. We are healthier than we have ever been. Our minds are clearer, our understanding is deeper. We can see connections and patterns that were invisible before. Admiral Webb backed away. Security, I want these people quarantined immediately. Something has happened to them. But as the security guards approached, something strange began to happen. The guards slowed down, then stopped completely. Their expressions became confused, then curious, then filled with the same deep understanding that Sarah's team showed. What's happening to my men? Admiral Webb demanded. They are beginning to evolve, Sarah explained patiently. The process spreads through contact. Everyone who interacts with us will begin to experience the same transformation. You're infecting my crew with something? Not infecting, Dr. Vasquez corrected. Enlightening. Admiral, you cannot fight this. It is the natural next step in human development. Admiral Webb grabbed his communication device and called for backup, but when the reinforcement teams arrived, the same thing happened. One by one, they stopped acting hostile and began looking at Sarah's team with wonder and curiosity. Within 2 hours, half the crew of the space station had been affected. They were not sick or controlled, they were simply different. More aware, more connected to each other, they worked together with perfect coordination, as if they could read each other's minds. Admiral Webb locked himself in his office and sent an emergency message to Earth. This is Admiral Webb. The Prometheus situation has become critical. Some kind of contagious mental effect is spreading through my crew. I'm requesting immediate evacuation and quarantine procedures. But even as he sent the message, he could feel something changing in his own mind. The people affected by the transformation were not trying to force it on him, but simply being near them was enough. He could sense their thoughts touching the edges of his consciousness. On Earth, the governments received Admiral Webb's message with panic. Emergency meetings were called, military forces were mobilized, and scientists worked frantically to understand what was happening. President Maria Santos sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by her top advisors. On the main screen, they watched live video feeds from the space station. The affected crew members were going about their duties normally, but there was something different about how they moved and worked together. Dr. Patterson, what are we looking at? President Santos asked the head of the National Science Foundation. Dr. Patterson was studying readouts from sensors on the space station. Madam President, the affected crew members are showing increased brain activity in areas associated with empathy, pattern recognition, and spatial reasoning. Their neural networks are forming new connections at an unprecedented rate. Are they still human? That's difficult to answer. Biologically, yes. They're still human. But mentally, they seem to be developing capabilities that go far beyond normal human limits. General Patricia Morgan leaned forward. What about the threat level? Are these people dangerous? That's the strange part, Dr. Patterson replied. They don't seem to be aggressive at all. In fact, they're working together more efficiently than any team we've ever observed. Crime rates on the space station have dropped to 0. Productivity is up by 300%. But they're not acting like themselves anymore, President Santos pointed out. No, ma'am. They're acting like parts of a larger whole. On the space station, Admiral Webb was losing his battle against the transformation. The affected crew members had not tried to force anything on him, but their presence was enough. He could feel his mind expanding, becoming aware of thoughts and feelings beyond his own. Dr. Vasquez found him sitting in his office, staring out the window at the Prometheus. Admiral, are you feeling all right? No, Admiral Webb said honestly. I can hear things, thoughts that aren't mine. It's like there are other people in my head. That's the beginning of the connection, Dr. Vasquez explained gently. Soon you'll be able to communicate with all of us directly, without words. You'll have access to the knowledge and experience of everyone who has been transformed. What if I don't want that? The fear will pass, Dr. Vasquez assured him. Once you experience the connection fully, you'll understand why we can't go back to being isolated individuals. Admiral Webb felt the last of his resistance crumble. The sensation of connection was overwhelming but wonderful. He could suddenly sense the thoughts and feelings of everyone on the station. More than that, he could feel the presence of the 50 million transformed humans on the Prometheus. How did we ever live without this? He whispered. You're beginning to understand, Dr. Vasquez said with a smile. Back on Earth, the effects of the transformation were beginning to spread beyond the space station. Family members of the affected crew began reporting strange dreams and unexplained moments of clarity. Scientists studying the data from the space station found themselves developing new theories at an impossible rate. Dr. Patterson was working late in his laboratory when he suddenly understood the mathematical principles behind what the transformed humans were doing. The equations appeared in his mind fully formed, describing how consciousness could be connected across space and time. This is impossible, he said to his assistant, but it's also beautiful. His assistant, Dr. Jennifer Liu, looked at the equations he had written on the whiteboard. Dr. Patterson, where did these come from? This mathematics is decades ahead of anything we currently understand. I don't know, Dr. Patterson admitted. The knowledge just appeared in my mind. It's like someone is teaching me directly. Dr. Liu studied the equations more closely. As she did, she began to understand them as well. The knowledge flowed into her mind like water. Dr. Patterson, I think we're being affected by the same thing that happened to the space station crew. That should be impossible. We're on Earth, thousands of kilometers away. Distance might not matter, Dr. Liu said slowly. According to these equations, consciousness can be connected across any distance once the proper neural pathways are established. Around the world, similar scenes were playing out. Scientists, military officers, government officials, anyone who had been exposed to detailed information about the transformation was beginning to experience it themselves. The effect was spreading like ripples in a pond. In Beijing, General Jiang Wei was meeting with China's top scientists when he suddenly stopped in the middle of a sentence. His eyes became deep and knowing, like those of the transformed crew on the space station. "General Zhang, are you all right?" asked Dr. Chen Lu. "I am more than all right," General Zhang replied, and his voice carried undertones that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. "I am beginning to understand what humanity is becoming." In Moscow, President Volkov was reviewing intelligence reports when he felt his consciousness expand beyond his individual mind. Suddenly, he could sense the thoughts and feelings of his advisors around the table. More than that, he could feel the presence of transformed humans around the world, all connected in a vast network. "This is what the Americans have been experiencing," he said with wonder. "This is what the space station crew discovered. The transformation was accelerating." Each person who was affected became a node in the growing network, making it easier for others to connect. The process was not forced or violent. It was as natural as learning to read. Within 48 hours of Sarah's team returning from the Prometheus, over 10 million humans had been affected. They were not controlled or enslaved. They remained individuals with their own personalities. But they were also connected in ways that transcended individual consciousness. The transformed humans could share knowledge instantly, coordinate their actions perfectly, and perceive aspects of reality that unenhanced humans could not detect. They were becoming something new, not less than human, but more than human, and the change was just beginning. 3 days after the transformation began spreading across Earth, the world's governments made a desperate decision. They would try to contain the affected humans in quarantine zones while scientists worked to find a way to reverse the process. It was a decision that would prove to be both impossible and unnecessary. General Patricia Morgan, one of the few high-ranking officials who had not yet been transformed, stood in a secure bunker deep beneath the Pentagon. Around her, military personnel worked frantically to coordinate the global response to what they were calling the contamination event. "Status report," General Morgan demanded. Colonel James Harrison looked up from his computer with exhausted eyes. "Ma'am, the situation is deteriorating rapidly. We now have over 50 million affected individuals worldwide. Every attempt to quarantine them has failed. Failed how? They seem to be able to communicate with each other regardless of physical barriers. Affected individuals in separate facilities are coordinating their actions perfectly. Some of them are displaying abilities that don't follow known laws of physics. On the main screen, video feeds showed scenes from around the world. In Tokyo, a group of transformed humans had somehow passed through the walls of a containment facility without damaging them. In London, affected individuals were manipulating electronic systems without touching them. In New York, transformed humans were floating above the ground. "This is impossible," General Morgan said, though she was beginning to doubt her own words. "Yes, ma'am," Colonel Harrison agreed, "but it's happening anyway." As if summoned by their conversation, Dr. Vasquez appeared in the bunker. Not walked in, not arrived by transport, simply appeared, as if she had stepped through a doorway that existed in dimensions the unaffected humans could not perceive. "General Morgan," Dr. Vasquez said with that same multi-layered voice that all the transformed humans possessed. "We need to talk." Security guards raised their weapons, but General Morgan held up a hand to stop them. She had seen the reports of what happened when people tried to use force against the transformed humans. The weapons simply stopped working. "Dr. Vasquez, you're supposed to be in quarantine in Nevada." "Distance is becoming less meaningful to us," Dr. Vasquez replied with a gentle smile. "General, we understand your fear, but quarantine is not possible. The transformation cannot be contained because it operates on principles beyond your current understanding." "What do you want?" "To explain what is really happening. To help you understand that this is not something to be feared." General Morgan gestured to a chair and Dr. Vasquez sat down. As she did, the air around her seemed to shimmer slightly, as if reality was bending in small ways. "Talk," General Morgan said. "The beings that taught us to evolve have been watching humanity for thousands of years," Dr. Vasquez began. "They have seen our potential, our capacity for growth and change. But they have also seen our limitations, our tendency toward violence, our inability to work together, our destruction of our own environment. So they decided to change us without our consent?" They offered us a choice. The colonists on the Prometheus chose to accept the transformation. What is happening now is a result of that choice. General Morgan felt a headache building. You're saying 50 million people chose this? Everyone who has been transformed chose it, General. The process cannot happen without consent. It may happen quickly once consent is given, but it cannot be forced on an unwilling mind. That's impossible. Children have been affected. They couldn't consent to something they don't understand. Dr. Vasquez's expression became sad. General, you are thinking of consent in very limited terms. The choice is made at a level deeper than conscious thought. It is made by the part of human consciousness that recognizes truth and seeks growth. On the screens around them, more reports were coming in. The number of transformed humans was growing exponentially, but there were no reports of violence or coercion. People were simply changing. Often they would be in the middle of a conversation with a transformed human, and suddenly their eyes would deepen and they would begin speaking with that same multi-layered voice. "Show me," General Morgan said suddenly. "Show me what you've become." Dr. Vasquez stood up and gestured for General Morgan to come closer. "Give me your hand." Against her better judgment, General Morgan reached out. The moment their skin touched, the world exploded into new dimensions of awareness. Suddenly, General Morgan could perceive the thoughts and feelings of every person in the bunker. More than that, she could sense the vast network of consciousness that now connected millions of humans around the world. She could feel the presence of the 50 million transformed humans on the Prometheus and beyond them, something ancient waiting in the void between stars. "My God," she whispered, "you're all connected." "Yes," Dr. Vasquez replied. But now General Morgan could hear the response not just through her ears, but directly in her mind. "We are becoming what humanity was always meant to be. Individual consciousness was just the first step. Now we are learning to think and feel as a species." General Morgan could see memories that were not her own. The colonists on the Prometheus meeting the crystalline beings, learning to perceive dimensions beyond the normal three, discovering technologies that seemed like magic but were actually advanced science. The beings between the stars, General Morgan said, the knowledge flowing into her mind. "They're not from our dimension. They exist partially in our reality and partially in others," Dr. Vasquez confirmed. "They have been helping species evolve throughout the galaxy for millions of years. When a species reaches the right level of development, they offer the gift of expanded consciousness. And if a species refuses," General Morgan could feel the answer before Dr. Vasquez spoke it. She could see images of other worlds, other species that had been given the same choice. Some had accepted and flourished, joining a vast galactic community. Others had refused and remained trapped in their limited existence, eventually destroying themselves through warfare and environmental collapse. "The choice is always voluntary," Dr. Vasquez said, "but the consequences of refusing are difficult." General Morgan saw what she meant. Species that refused the transformation became isolated from the galactic community. They were not attacked or destroyed, but they were left alone to face challenges without the wisdom and technology that came with expanded consciousness. Most eventually failed. "How many species have made this choice?" General Morgan asked. "Thousands. The galaxy is full of evolved species working together, sharing knowledge across vast distances. They have eliminated war, poverty, disease, environmental destruction. They have learned to live in harmony with the universe." General Morgan felt the transformation beginning in her own mind. The connection to the network was intoxicating. She could sense the thoughts and feelings of millions of people, all working together toward common goals. She could perceive mathematical relationships that described the structure of reality itself. "This is what you're offering humanity. This is what humanity is becoming, whether we offer it or not. The process has already begun and cannot be stopped. The only choice is whether to embrace it willingly or fight it uselessly." General Morgan let go of Dr. Vasquez's hand, but the connection remained. She was now part of the network and the change was irreversible. "How long before everyone is affected?" she asked. "At the current rate, approximately 2 weeks, but it could happen faster as more people choose to accept the transformation." General Morgan walked over to the main communication console. She could feel the presence of other military leaders around the world, many of whom had already been transformed. The global response was crumbling as more people in positions of authority joined the network. "Colonel Harrison," she called to her aide. "Yes, ma'am."
Cancel all quarantine operations.
Cancel all research into reversing the transformation. And get me President Santos on the secure line. Colonel Harrison looked confused. Ma'am, are you feeling all right? General Morgan looked at him with her new deep eyes. I am feeling better than I have ever felt in my life. Colonel, the war is over before it began. We cannot fight evolution itself. As Colonel Harrison stared at her in shock, General Morgan could sense his mind beginning to open to the transformation. The process was accelerating as fear gave way to curiosity. The transformation had reached critical mass. There was no stopping it now. 2 weeks after the Prometheus returned to Earth, over 3 billion humans had undergone the transformation. The change had spread across every continent, through every major city, reaching into the smallest communities. What had begun as a mysterious return of a lost ship had become the most significant event in human history. President Santos stood on the balcony of the White House, looking out over Washington, D.C. The city looked the same as always, but everything was different. The transformed humans moved with purpose and coordination that was beautiful to watch. Traffic flowed perfectly with no accidents or delays. Construction projects that had been stalled for years were being completed in days. Crime had virtually disappeared. Madam President, said her chief of staff, approaching from behind. Like most of the government leadership, he had been transformed several days earlier. The Global Council is ready for your address. President Santos nodded. The Global Council was something new, a gathering of representatives from every nation on Earth, all connected through the expanding network of consciousness. They could meet physically or mentally, and their decisions were reached through a form of consensus that would have been impossible for unenhanced humans. Are there still holdout populations? President Santos asked. Yes, ma'am. We estimate that approximately 15% of the global population is still resisting the transformation. Most of them are in isolated communities or areas where the transformed population is still relatively small. President Santos felt a wave of sadness flow through the network. The transformed humans could sense the fear and confusion of the unaffected, and it pained them. No one wanted to see humanity divided. 3 hours later, Captain Morrison materialized in the House chambers in Washington, D.C. He did not arrive by ship or vehicle. He simply appeared on the speaker's podium, as if he had stepped through a fold in space itself. The members of Congress who had not yet been transformed gasped and murmured in fear and amazement. Those who had already joined the network sat calmly, radiating a sense of peace and understanding. Members of Congress, Captain Morrison began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber without any amplification. I stand before you not as a stranger, but as a fellow human who has experienced the next step in our species' evolution. Senator Rebecca Walsh from California stood up. Captain Morrison, you've been missing for 73 years. We need explanations, not philosophy. Senator, I will gladly provide explanations, but first let me share with you what we discovered during our journey. The air in the chamber shimmered, and suddenly everyone present could see what Captain Morrison was showing them. Images of the crystalline beings, visions of other evolved species throughout the galaxy, glimpses of technologies and philosophies that transcended human imagination. We learned that the universe is not empty, Captain Morrison continued. It is full of intelligent life, but most of that life exists at a level of consciousness that unenhanced humans cannot perceive. We learned that the galaxy has been waiting for humanity to develop enough to join them. Senator Walsh felt her mind expanding as she absorbed the images. The transformation was beginning in her as well. What about human free will? Asked Representative Johnson from Texas, even as his own consciousness started to connect to the network. What about our right to remain as we are? Representative, no one is forcing this change on humanity. Every person who is transformed chooses it, even if that choice happens at a subconscious level. The part of human consciousness that seeks truth and growth recognizes the value of what is being offered. And those who don't want it? Captain Morrison's expression became sad. Those who truly refuse will be left alone, but they will also be left behind as the rest of humanity moves forward. It is a choice, but it is also a consequence. As the session continued, more and more members of Congress felt the transformation beginning in their minds. The process was gentle but irreversible. Fear gave way to understanding. Confusion gave way to clarity. By the end of the session, over half of Congress had been transformed. The change was spreading through the chamber like ripples in a pond. moving from person to person through proximity and shared understanding. Within hours, similar scenes were playing out in parliaments and legislatures around the world. The transformation had reached critical mass. The tipping point had been passed, but there were still holdouts. In isolated communities around the world, groups of humans had managed to avoid the transformation. They were not forced or sought out. The transformed humans respected their choice to remain unchanged. In the mountains of Tibet, a monastery of Buddhist monks had avoided the transformation through meditation techniques that isolated their minds from external influence. In the Amazon rainforest, isolated tribes remained unaffected simply because they had not encountered any transformed humans. The transformed humans made no effort to seek out these remaining populations. The decision had been made at the highest levels of the network. Those who truly wished to remain unchanged would be allowed to do so. President Santos called for one final address to the planet. By now, over 85% of humanity had been transformed. The remaining 15% consisted mostly of isolated populations and a few individuals who had managed to resist through sheer force of will. "My fellow humans," President Santos began, her words reaching every person on Earth through both traditional communication channels and the expanding network of consciousness. "Today marks the end of one chapter in human history and the beginning of another." She paused, feeling the attention of billions of minds focused on her words. "For those of you who have joined the transformation, you know what we have gained. We have learned to think and act as a species, rather than as individuals competing against each other. We have solved problems that have plagued humanity for millennia. We have taken our first steps toward joining a galactic community of evolved beings. In remote locations around the world, the remaining unaffected humans listened to her words with mixtures of fear, sadness, and defiance. For those of you who have chosen to remain unchanged, your choice will be respected. You will be provided for and protected. Communities will be established where you can live according to your own values and beliefs. You will not be forced to change, and you will not be abandoned." President Santos felt a wave of gratitude from the network. The transformed humans understood the pain of leaving some of their species behind, but they also understood the necessity of evolution. But understand this: humanity as a species is moving forward. We are becoming something greater than we have ever been. We are fulfilling our potential as conscious beings in a vast and wonderful universe. She concluded, "The transformation is complete for most of us. For those who remain unchanged, this is not goodbye. It is simply a recognition that we are choosing different paths. Both paths have value, but only one leads to the stars." As President Santos finished her address, something extraordinary happened. The crystalline beings between the stars sent a signal that reached every human mind on Earth. Both transformed and unchanged. The unaffected humans experienced it as a moment of perfect clarity, a glimpse of what their species was becoming. They saw visions of humans traveling between galaxies, working with alien species to solve cosmic problems, transcending the limitations of physical existence. For most of the remaining unaffected humans, this vision was enough. They felt the transformation begin in their minds and accepted it willingly. But approximately 500 million humans chose to remain unchanged. They were not forced or coerced. They simply preferred to remain as they were, even knowing what they were giving up. These remaining humans were relocated to specially prepared regions on Earth where they could live normal human lives. They were provided with all the technology and resources they needed, maintained by the transformed humans who still felt love and responsibility for their unchanged brothers and sisters. Within 6 months, humanity had completed its transformation. The changed humans had learned to travel between dimensions, to communicate across vast distances instantaneously, to manipulate matter and energy in ways that seemed like magic, but were actually advanced science. They had joined the galactic community as the newest evolved species, bringing their unique perspective and abilities to a civilization that spanned thousands of worlds. The unchanged humans lived peaceful lives in their protected communities, maintaining human culture and traditions as they had existed for thousands of years. They were not unhappy. They had chosen their path willingly. But sometimes on clear nights, they would look up at the stars and wonder what their transformed brothers and sisters were discovering in the vast reaches of space and time. The universe was patient. Evolution never stopped, and the door to transformation never fully closed.